So I had always been a really imaginative kid. I'd always lived in my imagination and had always written stories ever since I can remember, or drawn cartoons, or made up stories with my action figures, which is still in my office to connect me to that kid. So I'd always been this really imaginative kid. And as I kind of grew up, I never really realized that you could be a writer, that was a job you could actually do. My parents had very practical jobs. My dad worked in a carpet factory. My mum was a typist. It never occurred to me that I could go and write television. So I grew up, moved to Australia, got a real job in the music industry, which was fine. I love the people I work with, but I didn't really love the job, and I knew that it wasn't what I wanted to do. But I had this idea to just off the top of my head write a script about my experiences in the music industry, because it had been such a crazy time and lots of interesting stories. So I wrote this pilot for a TV show. I'd never written a script before, didn't really know what I was doing, but I wrote this thing. And to my shock, a producer found out about it and optioned it. And so I was like, oh, okay, this could actually be a thing. So that gave me the confidence to quit my job and then pursue study. So I studied for a long time, and then I got my first job on a soap opera in Australia, which everyone would know, Neighbours. And that was the best thing in the world. That was kind of my entry point. And I think I say to people a lot of the time who ask me, how do I get into writing? I think soap is an amazing place to start, because if you're good and you stick at it, you can very quickly work through a show, go in like a storyliner kind of level, and work your way up really, really quickly if you kind of stick at it. And that's what I did. And within a few years, I was kind of running the script department of that show, and then started writing episodes, and I was kind of off. So that's where it all started. I think every writer has a voice. I think, you can learn craft, but I think that inherent voice everyone has. And I think you just have to get out of your own way a lot of the time. I think you develop your voice with confidence, but looking back, I think I found my voice on the very first episode of Neighbours that I wrote. The scripts that I wrote before that, I was kind of finding my way, and I wasn't confident enough yet. But I think the minute you have a bit of confidence, it was like it was suddenly there. I wrote this episode of Neighbours, episode 5,483, I think, and wrote it and knew it was good, and was like, oh, okay, so I can do this, and it's a thing, and I'd found my voice, and it was funny, and there were twists and turns in it, and it was kind of what I wanted it to be. And from then on, I think I was then just on the path, and knew what felt like I knew what I was doing. Of course I didn't. So I tend to structure things that I write in either 3 or 4 acts, depending on the length. If it's a BBC full hour, usually 4 acts. If it's a 45-minute episode of something, then it tends to be 3. But every 10 to 15 minutes, I kind of separate it into acts. And I do that so that I can give myself, and this is informed actually by watching classic Doctor Who when I was a kid. It's informed by cliffhangers and mini cliffhangers, and giving myself a cliffhanger or a plot turn or something that changes in the story quite dramatically, that then kind of propels the characters forward. And I find that really useful if you have a kind of a tentpole structure, that every 10-15 minutes you have something big that happens that turns the story around and takes it off into a new area. I think that's a really useful structure to have. So that's the one that I usually stick by, especially when writing genre and things like Doctor Who. I think at the moment, the world we're living in at the moment, everyone is kind of looking for escape, and I certainly am. And as a writer, I enjoy escaping into other worlds and crafting new civilizations and cultures and planets, and all of that stuff I find really exhilarating and exciting. And it's also an escape from kind of where we are. But what I also love about science fiction is that it enables you to tell stories through that lens that would normally perhaps be really dry or boring or whatever. And I think The War Between is a really good example of that. The show that I've just finished recently, it's a show where we discuss the pollution of the waterways and the environment and climate change. And if that show wasn't a part of the Doctor Who universe, it would maybe be a show about an undercover reporter at a water company, and government and politics and boardroom meetings, and that's all fine. There's a version of that show that would be fine. But what's exciting is when you put it through a sci-fi lens, you can then have 10,000 sea devils coming out of the Thames, and that's what's really exciting about that kind of story. It's instantly not as dry. It's instantly more fun to kind of tell, but you can still get the message across with different means. I think writing something like The War Between versus writing something like Wentworth, I kind of think of it as all the same. To be honest, I don't really see a difference in that. For me, it's all about character, and it's about creating really interesting characters who are really real and really grounded. No matter what universe they're in, they feel real and right for the tone of that show. Whether they're on an alien planet or in a women's prison or working in a brewery, whatever it is that they're doing, that they feel real. That's what excites me, is writing really solid characters. So I don't really see a difference between sci-fi versus, straight drama. Yeah, I get asked a lot about, what are the top tips for writing, and it's so simple. And I know people have probably heard it before, but it's literally watch everything, read everything, and just write. Like, just keep writing, because I found that that's what helped me, was just absorbing as much as I could, reading as many scripts as I could, and the BBC Writers' Room is such an amazing resource. Like, that script library is incredible, and having that at your fingertips is just a godsend. So read everything on that website, watch as much as you can of stuff that you love, and then just keep writing, because that way you're going to develop your confidence and you're going to get better at what you do. The best bit of advice I ever had actually came a lot later. It didn't come when I was kind of starting out, and it was from Russell T Davies, funnily enough. We were developing a show together, a show of mine, that hasn't happened yet, but will one day. And I'd written the first draft of the first episode, and he'd read it. And he said, look, I love it, love the script. I only have one note. And I thought, amazing, brilliant. And he said, I don't think you love your central character enough. And I was a bit defensive about that. I was like, no, of course I do. That's insane. And then went away and thought about it and was like, oh my God, he's absolutely right. And in giving more time to that central character and loving that central character more, it completely unlocked the script, and it changed into something quite different. Similar idea, but it just became richer and so much better. And it was it was incredibly insightful for him to kind of see and give that one note, because quite often in television you're given 65,000 notes from various script editors, a lot of which don't really work. Because it's all subjective. But for someone that smart to have that level of insight, to just go, I've got one note that's going to change everything about the script, but it's really fundamental. I thought that was just genius, and I've always remembered that. So The War Between the Land and the Sea is a 5-part epic cinematic spin-off from the world of Doctor Who. You don't need to know anything about Doctor Who to come into it. It's a brand new show, but it's a drama that explores what would happen if an ancient civilization that lived beneath the sea woke up and suddenly wanted their planet back. And there's a central character called Barclay, played by Russell Davies, who's amazing, who is very much at the heart of this huge worldwide conflict that then erupts when this happens, supported by units who are a military task force established in Doctor Who carry on to the show. And it's up to them to help save the world. So yeah, it's epic, and it's a roller coaster, and yeah, I love it. To be honest, it was actually really, it felt really easy to write. I think because Russell T Davies had written such an extraordinary episode 1, and we worked so well together. It was just fun. We had a lot of laughs. We broadly plotted out where the other episodes would go, and then I'd just kind of go away and write them. So it was a relatively simple, straightforward process. But my favorite part of the show was actually the kind of reward that you get for writing is the afterwards, is the kind of pre-production period where you're working with an incredible team, with Russell and with everyone at Bad Wolf and an amazing director, and you're having 3-hour meetings about what do Sea Devils look like now, and designing props and costumes, and what's the music going to be, and the look of the show, all of that kind of stuff. Being involved in every facet of the production, I love and find really interesting. I'm always on set, and I'm just very involved in every aspect of shows that I make, and that's what I enjoy about it. It is kind of my reward for writing, but I also think when you're a writer of something, if you can kind of shepherd it through production as well, I think you do end up with a better product at the end of the day. Russell and I have known each other for ages, so it's always a joy working with him. He had written episode one before he wrote any of the 60th anniversary Doctor Who specials, so quite a long time ago. He'd written it and it kind of sat on the shelf. And then when I had delivered my first draft of my Doctor Who episode, Lucky Day, he said, "There's something else that I'd like you to have a look at. Do you want to be involved?" And I read this script and thought it was extraordinary. And of course, I was involved absolutely from reading page 3, 4. I was in, and we were filming Doctor Who at the time, so we didn't have a lot of time to plot stuff. Russell had broad ideas about where he wanted the show to go. So for every episode, we would just kind of sit down and snatch time here and there, an hour here, an hour there, and talk about what we think might happen. And then I'd just kind of go away and write. And then we'd come back together and, move certain things around. So for instance, some characters that I established in episode 2, we would then go back into episode 1 and seed them there. So they're established in there. I knew that he would be writing the finale, so I had to kind of write episode 4, leading towards certain plot points, knowing kind of what was coming. But it was just a really lovely, close working relationship, and we just laughed a lot. It was never a drama, and yeah, it was great fun. Writing Doctor Who is really hard, and I think it's massively easier if it's in your bones like it is in mine, and it has been from when I was kind of 4 years old. Because I think, there's a lot of eyes on this show. There's a lot of pressure that goes with it. It's got this extraordinary 60+ year legacy and a really vocal fan base. And so you have to kind of be across all of those things. And, luckily I am across all those things, just kind of coming from the fan perspective. You have to kind of know all that stuff, and not just the show, all the peripheral stuff as well. There's the world of Doctor Who. There's so many magazines and comics and audio adventures and all sorts of things. You kind of have to know all that stuff and be across all that stuff to be able to kind of forget it and then be kind of free with your writing. And I think the great thing about Doctor Who is that it can always be reinvented. With every new Doctor, every new era, you can kind of reinvent it and refresh it. But there's always with a show that's been going for this long, there's obviously also a lot of pitfalls and traps within that show as well. And I think, I've seen a lot of those traps where, in the 60 years, of course, things are not going to work as well as they should, or things that do work, you can kind of identify those. And because I kind of have all that stuff just in my DNA anyway, it means I can be kind of freer to kind of explore new ideas, and I know inherently what's going to work and what isn't going to work. So yeah, it's just always kind of fun to do. But I think the crucial thing about writing Doctor Who for me is that when I'm writing it, I am putting my absolute heart and soul into every word on every page, and that's just because I love it so much. And I think that's what you have to do as a writer, no matter what you're writing. When people come up to me and say they're applying for a job on like Casualty or EastEnders or whatever it is, what should they do? And my advice is always, well, how well do you know the show? And maybe they've seen a few episodes or whatever. And I'm like, no, you have to really be steeped in that show. If you really want to work on that show, you need to love it. You need to find a way to love it and be really passionate about it. And luckily, that's what I have in me anyway about Doctor Who. I think, whenever I'm writing Doctor Who or anything to do with Doctor Who, I'm literally putting my heart and soul into every word on every page. And I think that's really, really important. As a writer, you love what you're writing and you feel really passionate about it, because I think when you don't, you can tell. And yeah, with Doctor Who, I work really hard at it and I write it because I love it. And then I think if you can do that for a job, then you're winning. Definitely. I think it's the same with original authored pieces as well, because so when I was writing, the first episode of Wentworth, or when I was writing the Pact, you have to find a way into those characters to absolutely love and connect with those characters, to propel you through an entire season of story. So it doesn't matter what I'm writing, I always make sure that I love it. And if I don't love it, then I end up not writing it. It's kind of that simple. Life is too short. I think if you do find yourself writing something you're hating, don't do it. Find something else. Find something you're really passionate about, because you'll end up with a much better script and you'll end up being a much better writer if you're writing stuff that you love. Yeah, the difference with writing Doctor Who and The War Between, it's quite a tonal shift. I would say, we keep bandying words around like, more grounded and gritty and stuff like that. And the War Between is still it's very funny. It has a similar sensibility to Doctor Who, but is its brand new thing. And that was coming into it. That's what we really wanted to achieve, was that this was a standalone show where you didn't have to have Doctor Who knowledge, that you could come in brand new, fresh, and just enjoy it. And it was really crucial that we did that, and I think we did definitely achieve that. But tonally, it is quite different. The world without the Doctor is a very different place. But that's also what makes it really exciting to write, because the Doctor can't kind of swoop in at the last minute and save everyone. You've got ordinary people like you and me who have to save the world, and that means it's all the more exciting to write those characters. If I was stuck on a desert island with a solar-powered DVD player, the 3 series I would take with me would be Doctor Who, obviously, and I would expect it to be everything, classic series, new series, everything. It's a lot of DVDs, but hey. So I would take that. It's my favourite show. I would take Twin Peaks, David Lynch's incredible mystery, craziness, thriller, horror show. When I was growing up, that was really fundamental in teaching me that you could be quite weird with television sometimes, and it works if you're confident in your style and the story that you're telling. You can do all sorts of strange things, and it can actually work if it's all part of the same world. I just think it's a genius masterclass. So Twin Peaks. And the last thing I would take would be the 2003 reboot of Battlestar Galactica, which I think is just one of the best science fiction series of all time. Phenomenal storytelling. Ron Moore, the showrunner, is incredible. All of those writers, all of those actors. It's kind of a 4 or 5 season arc, which is just chef's kiss. So they're the 3 that I would take, and I would just watch them on a loop forever.